Hello, darlings. How are you doing today? Oh, it is so good to see you. Oh my goodness, Ryder. Thank you so much for the love. Thank you. Yay. I'm grateful for the lurk. And depending how long we go and how long you go, you might get a raid back. We'll see. We'll see how time pans out. But thank you so much for the subscription to 9 months. Oh, you're born. You're a baby now. Whew. Cheers to you. So hello, yes, my darlings. We are here with some Fairytale Saturday as it is. We had stuff going on with the holiday, and we promised another friend. Somebody said we have the triumvirate of holy days this weekend with Ramadan and Passover and Easter. All in one weekend. So, it's been a lot going on. Hello, Rudy. Good to see you. Glad you are here. Oh, it's so good to see everyone. So, what we are planning on doing, is some stories based around Easter. Some maybe with bunnies. So, yes. Shall we get to it? Yes, welcome to my library. Well, I have a sip of a treat from a friend. Dr. Pepper and Cream Soda Zero. They're hard to find. I'm so very happy. Although when I did open it, it did kind of psst on me. I guess that's what you get. So, it's a big holy weekend. And if not, it's a 3 or 4 day holiday maybe for some of you. So, I hope you're enjoying it. So we changed it up a little bit. We're going to do Fairytale Saturday. So we can nestle down and wait for the bunny or the mass or sunset, sunrise, or any, and even just sit here and chat with us through the night a little bit, because you're not alone out there. So I'm looking at some Easter stories, and pretty much all of them, they're going to be different authors, but they come from the Emerald storybook, which was edited by Ada and Eleanor Skinner. I know, those are familiar names if you've seen some of our other story times. They came out with the Gem series. There's one, Andrews did the Colored Fairy series, and this is the Gem book series by the Skinners. And so there's the Ruby, the Sapphire storybook, the Pearl storybook. This is the Emerald one. And a lot of this deals with spring and the Easter holiday and such. And this one was published in 1915. Now, some of the stories, because they do use a variety of different authors, and I will... Sunrise, sunset. Hey, could be worse. I had Hosanna, Hey Zana stuck in my head from Jesus Christ Superstar yesterday, thanks to a friend. And then I got to introduce them to some of the musicals, so... See, you never know what could be a good opportunity for introducing somebody to something new. Or, you also never know when you'll get a song stuck in your head for some very interesting reasons. But so the Emerald Storybook, plus all the Gem storybooks have different authors. Either they're like Old English verses or Old Norse verse or different authors. So it's all been collected up until when it was published in 1915. So some of these can be much older than the early 1900s. Just something to bear in mind. But they are fun for a good way to start with a compilation of different stories, usually from around the world. So the Emerald Storybook is all like spring stories and legends and nature and Easter and meadows and ponds. So that whole spring awakening, new earth, Easter holidays, all that is what is in this storybook, and which is what we will be reading from. Oh, Simon, Jill, Simon. Hiya, darling. Oh, so good to see you. So glad you could join us. Oh, I hope you're snuggling with the kitty. So, like I said, oh, so good to have you with us. So we're going to do some stories from the Emerald Storybook, put together and copyrighted and edited and compiled by Ada and Eleanor Skinner. So, we're just going to sit down, relax, have some water with you, grab a favorite drink, some hot tea, a hot toddy. I'm going with some Dr. Pepper because I still have some things to do to prepare for tomorrow when we're done here. So, get your drink, settle back, relax, snuggle with a kitty or a puppy or some floof if you have them. Or maybe your favorite stuffed animal. Or your favorite friend. We're going to settle back and have some stories. The first one is a German legend called the Easter Rabbit. Shrill and sharp north wind whistled through the forest where the trees and flowers were patiently awaiting the arrival of my Lady Spring. Jack Frost was delighted. Perched on the topmost branches of the great trees, he laughed gleefully. "Ha ha ha! Surely old Father Winter has forgotten that April is almost here," said he. "I shall not remind him, not I. They say my Lady Spring, who is waiting in Wildflower Hollow, is growing most impatient." "And so am I," whispered Mother Maple to her neighbor Dame Oak. "I've told my babies many pleasant stories about my Lady Spring and her companion, Merry Sunshine. I'm afraid I shall be unable to keep them in their dark cradles much longer." "Oh, do hold them back a few days," said Dame Oak. You remember what trouble that rude, rollicking fellow Jack Frost made last year? So long as he is here, he insists on playing with all the babies of the forest. I do wish Lady Spring would come and tell him to be off. He'll never go so long as his bold brother North Wind remains, sighed Silver Beach. Never mind, said Dame Oak. I feel sure we shall not have to wait much longer. Indeed, I saw Merry Sunshine dancing near the edge of the forest yesterday. I feel quite hopeful. Oh, how happy I shall be to hear Thrush's song again, said Silver Beach. And the happy children's voices. They haven't been to the forest since nutting season, said Dame Oak. I'm sure they are longing to come again. For some time, Lady Spring had been waiting in Wildflower Hollow near the edge of the forest. Only a few days ago, the children had come there to gather flowers. Not a bird or blossom anywhere. See how brown and bare that bank is, said one. And Easter's almost here. I wonder why Lady Spring is so late, said another. Maybe she has forgotten us, said a tiny companion. I am very disappointed. Last year at this time that bank was blue with violets. Come, let us go home. And away ran the children. I shall wait no longer, said Lady Spring. Come, Merry Sunshine. Away danced Merry Sunshine, and Lady Spring followed in trailing robes of green and white. Waving her silver wand over the bank of Wildflower Hollow, she whispered, Ready, violets? Come. Starry Bluet, my sweet anemone, you need wait no longer. Ah, brave Artbus, I see you are expecting me. Did you think I was never coming, my dainty spring beauty? How graceful Lady Spring looked, waving her magic wand here and there through the forest. Wherever she stooped and touched the brown earth, the fresh grass leaped forth. When she tapped the great tree trunks, the bare branches above instantly veiled themselves in tender green. She waved at the brooklet, and away it ran over the moss and pebbles. Sing, Merry Sunshine, dance and sing, Lady Spring called to her companion. Merry Sunshine trilled the gayest song. It ran sweetly through forest and echoed far away over the hills to the south, where the birds were waiting patiently for the call. How gladly they came. Bluebird and bobolink, cardinal and chickadee, blackbird and thrush and wren, all the forest warblers answered Merry Sunshine's song of spring. At last my work is done, said Lady Spring joyously. When are the children coming? Asked Dame Oak. Oh, to be sure. I must not forget to send them word that I am here. Robin Redbreast, will you take a message of spring to the children? I'm sure they will want to see the lovely blossoms and hear the sweet bird songs. Lady Spring, said Robin, I'm afraid I cannot go today. You see, my mate and I are building a soft, warm nest in Oak Tree. We are very late this year. To be sure, Robin. I wonder where I can find a messenger. I think Red Fox would go for you, answered Robin Redbreast. See, here he comes now. Will you take word to the children that I have come, Rainyard? Asked Lady Spring. Oh, I should be glad to, but the people might think I come to steal their chickens. I believe Black Bear would be a better messenger than any of us. I'll run and ask him to go. But Rainyard brought back the answer, that Black Bear was afraid he would frighten the children too much. What shall I do for a messenger? Sighed Lady Spring. Robin cocked his head one side and looked very thoughtful. Then he said, I have it. I believe Bunny Rabbit would go. I saw him pass but a moment ago. I'll call him. At Robin's whistle, Bunny came leaping out of the bushes. Bunny Rabbit, I want you to take the message to the children in the city. Please go and tell them spring has come." "A message to the city, Lady Spring?" exclaimed Bunny, raising his ears upright. "Please ask me to do anything but that. Dear me, the dogs might catch me. They bark so fiercely, and naughty boys might chase me. I'm sure I should never come back." Bunny dropped his voice and looked quickly about in all directions. Lady Spring was puzzled. "Bunny," said Robin, "couldn't you go at night? You know the dogs and boys go to sleep then, and you can hop so softly that I'm sure they would not hear you. Besides, your ears are very sharp." "Well, perhaps I could go at midnight," said Bunny thoughtfully. "But how can I take a message to the children without wakening them?" "Oh, I can manage that," said Lady Spring. "Meet me in Wildflower Hollow a little before 12 o'clock. Then you shall know all about my plan." "I will come," said Bunny. Lady Spring made a beautiful basket out of twigs and leaves and grasses. She lined it with the softest moss. Around the top she placed a garland of choicest wildflowers. And when the birds knew that she was sending a message to the children, each one wished to help her. So they sent lovely little eggs of all colors, greenish blue, brown, white, and spotted. How beautiful they looked, lying on the bed of moss, wreathed with flowers. A little before midnight, Bunny came to Wildflower Hollow. "I am ready," said Lady Spring. "See, Bunny, here is plenty of moss. Do be careful with these precious eggs. When you come to a house where a little child lives, take out a bit of moss and form it into a wee nest like this," said Lady Spring, weaving quickly a moss nest. "Then put into each one a wild flower and an egg. So, leave an egg for each child in the house." Yes, I understand, Lady Spring," said Bunny. "How pretty the nest is." Off he started as gaily as could be. On Easter morning, merry sunshine wakened the children early. See, I found this little moss nest on the doorstep," cried one of them. "There's a wildflower and 3 colored eggs in it. How beautiful!" "An egg for each of us," said another. "I wonder what it means." I know, said little brother. "There are bunny tracks on the path. He must have brought the nest to us. Perhaps he came to tell us spring is here." "Of course he did," cried the children, clapping their tiny hands in glee. "Bunny was Spring's messenger." Away to the woods ran the children, crying out, "Spring is here! Spring is here! Bunny Rabbit brought us the message!" That's a cute little story. That would even be a fun story to do a skit of one time. Hope you like that story. Bunny Rabbit, Bunny Rabbit. The next story we have is called The Boy Who Discovered the Spring. It was written by Raymond MacDonald Alton. There came once a little elf boy to live on this earth, and he was so much pleased with it that he never stayed. So much pleased with it that he did stay, never caring to go back to his own world. do not know where his own world was, or just how he came to leave it. Some thought that he was dropped by accident from some falling star, and some that he had flown away, thinking that he could fly back again whenever he chose, because he did not know that children always lose their wings when they come into this world. But no one knew certainly, as he never told anyone. And after all, it did not matter, since, as I have already said, he liked the earth so much that he did not care to leave it. There was a hermit who lived in the valley where the little boy had first come, and as he had a room in his house for a visitor, he took him in, and they grew to like each other so well that, again, the little boy did not care to go away, nor did the hermit care to have him. The hermit had not always been a hermit, but he had become a sorrowful man, and did not care to live where other people lived, or to share any of their pleasures. The reason he had become a sorrowful man was that his only child had died, and it seemed to him that there was nothing worth living for after that. So he moved to the lonely valley, and I suppose would have spent the rest of his life by himself if it had not been for the little elf boy. It was a very lovely valley, with great green meadows that sloped down to a rippling brook, and in summertime were full of red and white and yellow blossoms. Over the brook there hung huge green trees, whose roots made pleasant places to rest when one was tired, and along the water's edge there grew blue flowers, while many little frogs and other live creatures played there. It was summertime when the little elf boy came, and the flowers and the trees and the brook and the frogs made him very happy. I think in the world from which he came they did not have such things. It was made chiefly of gold and silver and precious stones, instead of things that grow and blossom and keep one company. So the elf boy was very happy. He did not ask to go to play in the village over the hill, but was quite content with the meadows and the brookside. The only thing that did not please him was that the old hermit still remained sorrowful, thinking always of his child who had died, and this the elf boy did not understand, for in the world from which he came, nothing ever died. And he thought it strange that if the hermit's child had died, he did not patiently wait for him to come back again. So the summer went merrily on, and the elf boy learned to know the names of all the flowers in the meadow and to love them dearly. He also became so well acquainted with the birds that they would come to him for crumbs and sit on the branches close by to sing to him. The frogs would do the same thing, and although the elf boy did not think their voices as sweet as those of the birds, he was too polite to let them know it. But when September came, there began to be a sad change. The first thing the elf boy noticed was that the birds began to disappear from the meadows. When he complained of this, the hermit told him they had gone to make their visit to Southland, and would come back again. And this he easily believed. But as time went on, and the air became more and more still as the last of them took their flight, he began to lose heart. What was worse, at the same time, the flowers began to disappear from the meadows. They were dead, the hermit said, and in this way the elf boy learned what that meant. At first others came to take their places, and he tried to learn to like the flowers of autumn as well as those which he had known first. But as these faded and dropped off, none came after them. The mornings grew colder, and the leaves on the trees were changing in a strange way. When they grew red and yellow instead of green, the elf boy thought it was a queer thing for them to put on different colors, and wondered how long it would last. But when they began to fall, he was very sad indeed. At last there came a day when every limb was bare, except for a few dried leaves at the top of one of the tallest trees. The elf boy was almost broken-hearted. One morning he went out early to see what new and dreadful thing had happened in the night, for it seemed now that every night took something beautiful out of the world. He made his way toward the brook, but when he reached the place where he usually heard it calling to him as it ran merrily over the stones, he could not hear a sound. He stopped and listened, but everything was wonderfully still. Then he ran as fast as his feet would carry him to the border of the brook. Sure enough, it had stopped running. It was covered with a hard sheet of ice. The elf boy turned and went to the hermit's house. By the time he had reached it, the tears were running down his cheeks. "Why, what is the matter?" asked the hermit. "The brook is dead," said the elf boy. "I think not," said the hermit. "It is frozen over, but will not hurt it. Be patient, and it will sing to you again." "No," said the elf boy. "You told me that the birds would come back, and they have not come. You told me that the trees were not dead, but their leaves have every one gone, and I'm sure they are. You told me that the flowers had seeds that did not die, but would make other flowers, but I cannot find them, and the meadow is bare and dark. Even the grass is not green anymore. It is a dead world. In the summertime I did not see how you could be sorrowful, but now I do not see how anyone can be happy." The hermit thought it would be of no use to try to explain anything more to the elf boy, so he said again, "Be patient," and tried to find some books in which he could teach the boy to read and make him forget the outside world. The next time they went for a walk to the village over the hill, the elf boy was very curious to see whether the same thing had happened there that had happened in their valley. Of course it had. The trees there seemed dead too, and the flowers were all gone from the dooryards. The boy expected that everyone in the village would now be as sorrowful as the hermit, and he was very much surprised when he saw them looking as cheerful as ever. There were some boys playing on the street corner who seemed to be as happy as boys could be. One of them spoke to the elf boy, and he answered, "How can you play so happily when such a dreadful thing has happened to the world?" "Why, what has happened?" "The flowers and trees are dead," said the elf boy. "The birds are gone, and the brook is frozen, and the meadow is bare and gray, and it is so on this side of the hill also." Then the boys in the street laughed merrily and did not answer the elf boy, for they remembered that he was a stranger in the world, and supposed he would not understand if they should try to talk to him. And he went on through the village, not daring to speak to any others, but all the time wondering that the people could still be so happy. As the winter came on, the hermit taught him many things from the books in his house, and the elf boy grew interested in them and was not always sad. And when the snow came, he found ways to play in it, and even saw that the meadow was beautiful again, though in a different way from what it had been in summer. Yet still he could not think the world by any means so pleasant a place as it had been in the time of flowers and birds, and if it were not that he had become very fond of the hermit, who was now the only friend he could remember, he would have wished to go back to the world from which he had come. It seemed to him now that the hermit must miss him very much if he should go away, since they two were the only people who seemed to really understand how sorrowful a place the earth is. So the weeks went by. One day in March, as he and the hermit sat at their books, drops of water began to fall from the eaves of the roof, and they saw that the snow was melting in the sunshine. "Do you want to take a little walk down toward the brook?" asked the hermit. I should not wonder if I could prove to you today that it has not forgotten how to talk to you." "Yes," said the elf boy, though he did not think the hermit could be right. It was months since he had cared to visit the brook. It made him so sad to find it still and cold. When they reached the foot of the hillside, the sheet of ice was still there, as he had expected. "Never mind," said the hermit. "Come out on the ice with me, and put down your ear and listen." So the elf boy put down his ear and listened, and he heard as plainly as though there were no ice between, the voice of the brook gurgling in the bottom of its bed. He clapped his hands for joy. "It is waking up, you see," said the hermit. "Other things will waken too, if you will be patient." The elf boy did not know quite what to think, but he waited day after day, with his eyes and ears wide open, to see if anything else might happen. And wonderful things did happen all the time. The brook sang more and more distinctly, and at last broke through its cold coverlet and went dancing along in full sight. One morning, while the snow was still around the house, the elf boy heard a chirping sound, and looking from his window, saw a red robin outside asking for his breakfast. "Why," cried the boy, "have you really come back again?" "Certainly," said the robin. "Don't you know it is almost spring?" But the elf boy did not understand what he said. There was a pussy willow growing by the brook, and the boy's next discovery was that hundreds of little gray buds were coming out. He watched them grow bigger from day to day, and while he was doing this, the snow was melting away in great patches, where the sun shone warmest on the meadow. The blades of grass that came up into the daylight were greener than anything the elf boy had ever seen. Then the pink buds came on the maple trees and unfolded day by day. And the fruit trees in the hermit's orchard were as white with blossoms as they had been lately with snow. "Not a single tree is dead," said the elf boy. Last of all came the wildflowers. Blue and white violets near the brook, dandelions around the house, and a little later, yellow buttercups all over the meadow. Slowly but steadily, the world was made over until it glowed with white and green and gold. The elf boy was wild with joy. One by one his old friends came back, and he could not bear to stay in the house for many minutes, from morning till night. Now he knew what the wise hermit had meant by saying, "Be patient," and he began to wonder again what the hermit could be sorrowful for in so beautiful a world. One morning the church bells in the village, whose ringing was the only sound that ever came from the village over the hill, rang so much longer and more joyfully than usual, that if the elf boy asked the hermit why they did so, the hermit looked in one of his books and answered, "It is Easter Day. The village people celebrate it on Sunday every spring." "May we not go also?" asked the elf boy. And as it was the first time he had ever asked to go to the village, the hermit could not refuse to take him. The village was glowing with flowers. There were many fruit trees, and they too were in bloom. Everyone who passed along the street seemed either to wear flowers or to carry them in his hand. The people were all entering the churchyard, and here the graves which had looked so gray and cold when the hermit and the boy had last seen them were beautiful with flowers that the village people had planted or had strewn over them for Easter. The people all passed into the church, but the hermit and the elf boy, who never went there where there was a crowd, stayed outside, where the hummingbirds and bees were flying happily among the flowers. Suddenly, there came from the church burst of music. To the elf boy it seemed the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. He put his finger on his lip to show the hermit that he wanted to listen. These were the words they sang. I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive for evermore. The boy took hold of the hermit's hand and led him to the church door, that they might hear still better. He was very happy. Oh, he cried, I do not believe that anything ever really dies. The hermit looked down at him and smiled. Perhaps not, he said. When the music began again, a strange thing happened. The hermit sang the Easter song with the others. It was the first time he had sung for many years. All silently and soft as sleep, the snow fell, flake on flake. Slumber, spent earth, and dream of flowers, till springtime bids you wake. Again the deadened bough shall bend, with blooms of sweetest breath. Oh, miracle of miracles, this life that follows death. So, what do you think of that story? A nice, sweet one from a different perspective. A fun little story. Ah, it's interesting how they combined elves and the other beliefs in the springtime, and yet still brought in some religion to it. I find it fascinating when you have these different stories and folk tales that are intertwining different beliefs in a way to tell a good story. So, the next story we have is called The Maple Seed. There is no author attributed to it, so it is one that has been passed down. And these are still from the Emerald Storybook, compiled by Ada and Eleanor Skinner. Yes, we have the maple seed. On the topmost twig of a maple tree there grew a seed. In the springtime, the gentle movement of the sap and the soft rustle of the leaves whispering among themselves had awakened him. Then, day by day, half sleeping and half conscious, he had fed upon what the roots provided, stretching himself lazily in the sunshine. Presently, his wing began to unfold. "That is very curious," said he, stirring a little. "It must be a mistake. I don't flutter about like the bees." That bit of wing, which seemed his and not his, puzzled him. "It must belong to something else," he thought, and afterward he was always on the lookout for a bee or dragonfly with only one wing, but none came. The hot summer noons and the long moonlit nights became sultrier, and the leaves dropped. "How withered I am," said the seed to his most intimate friend, a leaf that hung from a near bough. "It makes me feel quite brittle." But the leaf did not answer, for just then it fell from the twig with a queer, reluctant shiver to the ground. "Ah," murmured the maple seed, "I understand." So he was not surprised when a rude breeze twisted him off one day and sent him spinning into space. "Here I go," thought he, "and this is the end of it." "Puff," said the breeze, who had seen much of the world and looked with contempt upon the untraveled. "Puff, how ignorant!" And he blew the seed right into a crack in the earth. "It must be the end, for all that," insisted the seed. No wonder he thought so, for it was cold and dark where he lay. A troubled cloud leaned down and wept over him. Then he began to grow amazingly in the warmth and moisture. "If this goes on," he thought, "I shall certainly burst, and then I must die. How is one to live with a crack in his sides?" But the maple seed was wrong. He did not die. An unsuspected, mysterious strength sustained him. His roots found food in the brown earth, and he lifted up a slender stem into the pure sunlight and warm air. Through spring, summer, autumn, and winter, year after year, this lived and grew until the tiny sapling had become a beautiful tree with spreading branches. "Ah," said the tree, "how stupid I was." It was very pleasant on the lawn. An old couple from the house nearby came out in good weather to sit under the tree. They reminded him of some fragile leaves he had seen fluttering somewhere in the past. He was glad to have them come, and he kept his coolest shade for them. Partly for their sakes. He liked to have the robins sing in his branches. The years went by. The old man tottered out alone to sit in the cool shadow. He was bent and sorrowful. "Ah," sighed the tree, I know! He has lost his leaf and feels brittle. If I could only tell him this is not the end." After this, many sunny days came, but not the old man. And the tree concluded that he had been blown away. If he only knew that he would grow again, he said to himself. Unless one knows that, it is so uncomfortable to lie in the dark. A great storm came. The sky blackened, the winds blew with might, and the heavy rain fell. The maple was uprooted and broken. The next day there came men with axes who cut the tree in pieces and drew it to the house. "Is this the end?" he questioned. But no. The logs were piled one day in the fireplace in a large, sunny room. The old man leaned from his chair to warm his hands by the cheerful heat the crimson flame gave out. "Is it the maple?" he said. "Oh, This goes with the rest. The fire grew brighter, burned duller, turned the embers, smoldered to ashes. The hearth was cold. The figure was still sitting in the armchair, but the old man himself had gone away. The spirit of the maple whispered, "Does he know? There is no end." Hello, Tris. Hello, Stay Nerdy. Good to see you. So glad you could join us. Oh, we've got some great stories going on for Eastertide and spring. We had a cute little one called The Legend of the Easter Lily. Still from the Emerald Book. When Jesus grew to be a man, he went about teaching the people how to live. Many loved Jesus and believed what he told them, but some doubted his words, while others were unkind and even cruel. At last, some wicked people believed it was unwise to let Jesus live and teach, and they hanged him upon a cross. All his friends were very sad that they had seen him die. They wrapped his body in linen clothes and laid him in a tomb in a garden. A great rock was rolled in front of the tomb, and soldiers were placed to guard the way day and night, for the wicked people who had killed Jesus did not wish any of his friends to take his body away. All night and all the next day the soldiers watched the tomb. The second night a strange and wonderful light came slowly in the east, and some little birds began to sing beautiful songs. Suddenly there was a great noise and a shaking of the ground, and a beautiful angel came down from heaven, rolled the stone away from the tomb, and Jesus came forth. 2 beautiful angels stood at the door to meet him, and with them he walked away through the garden. When the friends of Jesus came to the tomb early in the morning, they saw a wonderful sight. "Behold," said one, pointing to the garden near the tomb, "pure white lilies have come forth." "And behold," said the other, "where pure white lilies mark the footsteps of Jesus and the angels." Cute little one. Spirit and Life by Margaret Emma Ditto. Two little souls were speeding their outward way from God. Angels folded their white wings in wondering silence, and watched the little ones go forth upon their unknown mission. The sky parted to let them pass in trailing clouds of glory. The two souls swept on into that unmeasured space where there is no light but the stars, and no sound but the voice of their harmonies. Then the two little souls spoke. "Who are you?" "Who are you?" asked each of the other. "I am Spirit. I am Life," they made answer. "It is all one," sang the little souls together. "We are the same. We came from God. We are going to dwell with men." So they sang very happily as they sped along, and their voices were tuned to the music of the great spheres. When the little souls reached the earth, they said goodbye to each other, for each little soul had a house of his own. Not an immovable house of wood and stone, but a tiny tabernacle that could be moved about. It was made of flesh and blood and skin and soft bones. It was the form of a little child. "Oh, how nice!" cried each little soul, quickly speeding through the house from top to toe, and pulling the strings which set the breath to coming and going, the little fingers and toes to quirking and nestling. "I must take a peep out of the windows," cried each little soul, as he pulled up the curtains and looked out. "Oh, our baby has blue eyes like the violets!" shouted the noisy children. "Ah, the prince looks upon us! His royal highness has eyes like his father, the king," said the grand courtiers, speaking low with deep reverence, for one of the little souls had found its home in a peasant's hut, the other in the palace of a great king. The little souls never saw one another again until they had spent their time in earth and were flying back to God. Again they were speeding their way through the unmeasured spaces of the stars. The souls knew each other, remembering the time when they had gone out from God to dwell among men. They gazed with joy at each other, for these returning souls were full of gracious loveliness, such as earthly eyes have not seen. "Sweet Life, you are no longer a little soul," said Spirit. "You are strong and beautiful. You must have dwelt in a great house." "Aye," replied Life serenely. "It was a perfect house, for the greatest of builders made it for me." "Then it was spacious and lofty and beautiful, and it stood in high and sunny space?" "Oh, no, it was none of these," replied Life. "It was narrow and infirm, and it trembled in the blast. No one who saw it desired it, but I loved it because it was the gift of God, and I was so thankful. It stood in a deep valley, and the shadows of the mountains made it dark, and I could not look far away. I could not look down. There was only one way to look, and that was up. And my light came not from this side or that, but straight down from the Father of lights, and I was a shining one, though I lived in a dark place." "What did you do in your house?" "Always I toiled and served and suffered and loved, for some needed me who were poor and weaker than I. Sometimes I was hungry and thirsty and in pain, but oftener I shared my loaf and cup and helped the pain of others, and I kept the door ajar so that the poor and troubled ones who were cast down and ashamed could come in without knocking and rest in a warm place, and they loved me, the poor, the weak, and the little ones. They are weeping now because my house is empty, and I shall look out of the windows no more. It is cold. The hearth fire can never glow again, but my house was weak and crumbling down upon me. I could stay no longer, so I came away and left it fallen prone upon the ground, earth to earth. My house," said the Spirit, "was not like that. It was noble and strong. It stood on high among the kings of the earth and looked over my broad dominions. My house had towers of strength, and halls of bounty, and fair gardens with pleasant fruits. Every one who saw it desired it for its beauty and feared it for its strength. It could not be shaken in the rudest blast, and the shock of war could not make it tremble or force its gates? What did you do in your house? Always like you, I toiled and served and suffered and loved, but not like you in way of doing. For I was a king with scepter and crown, and what I did was done in the royal manner. I could not share my cup and loaf with the hungry, nor lay my hand on the brow of pain as you did. But I could make laws and find out wisdom that would strengthen the land and bring bread and meat and health to my poor people. I could not take the suffering ones into my own house as you did, for they were many and my house was but one. But my house should stand a castle in their behalf, a stronghold and defense. And so standing at Med's doom, in the prime of its glory, it reeled turret and foundation, beneath the onslaught of the oppressor, and with a great fall it lay prone on the battleground, crumbling back to earth. A herald went through the land crying, "The king is dead! The king is dead!" "So is good Barbara," answered the peasants. "She was born the same night as the king. She died the same day." The two souls swept down through the wide spaces of the stars, on and on through the pearly gates of heaven. Angels folded their wings and looked with tender awe upon these gracious beings who had come from the earth. "We cannot tell who they are," said the angels. "One was a king, and one was a peasant, but one cannot tell which was the king and which was the peasant," said the angels. "These beings are alike, wondrous, fair, and noble." The two souls swept on, with equal stroke of their shining wings, through the serried ranks of the heavenly host, and God did not welcome these homecoming souls as king or peasant, but he gave to each a new name, the new name which he has promised to him that overcometh. Interesting take, isn't that? Interesting indeed. I like different takes on things. We have a poem called Little Boy Blue by Alfred Noyes. So a lot of people probably know the first line or two. Thank you, Stay Nerdy. You may not have necessarily heard the entire poem. That is, until today. We'll hear the entire poem. Little boy blue, come blow up your horn. Summon the day of deliverance in. We are weary of bearing the burden of scorn, as we yearn for the home that we never shall win. For here there is weeping and sorrow and sin, and the poor and the weak are a spoil for the strong. Ah, when shall the song of the ransom begin? The world has grown weary with waiting so long. Little boy blue, you are gallant and brave. There was never a doubt in those clear bright eyes. Come, challenge the grim dark gates of the grave, as the skylark sings to those infinite skies. This world is a dream, say the old and the wise, and its rainbows arise over the false and the true. But the mists of the morning are made of our sighs. Ah, shatter them, scatter them, little boy blue. Little boy blue, if the child heart knows, sound but a note as little one may, and the horns of the desert shall bloom with the rose, and the healer shall wipe all tears away. Little boy blue, we are all astray, the sheep's in the meadow, the cow's in the corn. Ah, set the world right as a little one may. Little boy blue, come blow up your horn. speaking of blue, we have There Are No Dead by Maurice Maeterlinck, adapted from The Bluebird. Till, said Light one morning, I have received a note from the fairy Berlioune telling me that the bluebird is probably in the graveyard. What shall we do? Asked Till. It is very simple, answered Light. The fairy gave strict orders. You and Mittel are to go to the graveyard alone. At midnight you will turn the diamond, and the dead will come out of the ground. Till did not feel pleased. Aren't you coming with us? He asked. No, said Light. I shall stay at the gate of the graveyard. There's nothing to fear. I shall not be far away, and those who love me and whom I love always find me again. Light had scarcely done speaking when everything changed. The shiny temple, the glowing flowers, the splendid gardens vanished to make way for a little country graveyard lying in the soft moonlight. Till and Mittel clung to one another. I am frightened, said Mittel. I am never frightened, said Till, shaking with fear. Are the dead alive? Asked Mittel. No, said Till. They're not alive. Are we going to see them? Of course. Light said so. Where are they? Asked Mittel. Here, under the grass or under those big stones, Mittel. Are those the stones of their houses? Asked Mittel. Yes. When will you turn the diamond, Till? Light said I was to wait until midnight. Isn't it midnight yet? Till looked at the church clock. Listen, it is going to strike. Above the children, the tones of the clock boomed out as it started to strike 12. I want to go away, Till. I want to go away. Not now, Mittel. I'm going to turn the diamond. No, cried Mittel. Don't. I'm so frightened. Brother, I want to go away. Till tried vainly to lift his hand. He could not reach the diamond with Mittel clinging to him. I am so frightened. Poor Till was quite as frightened as she, but at each trial his courage had grown greater. The 11th stroke rung out. The hour is passing. It is time. And releasing himself from Mittel's arms, he turned the diamond. A moment of suspense followed for the poor children. Mittel hid her face in Til's breast. They're coming, she cried. They're coming. Till shut his eyes and leaned against a heavy stone beside him. The children remained in that position for a minute, hardly daring to breathe. Then they heard birds singing. A warm, scented breeze fanned their face, and on hands and neck they felt the soft heat of the balmy summer sun. Reassured, but finding it hard to believe in so great a miracle, they opened their eyes and looked about them. From all the open tombs were rising thousands of delicate flowers, gradually growing more and more tall and plentiful and marvelous. Little by little they spread everywhere, over the paths, over the grass, transforming the rude little graveyard into a fairy-like garden. Its sweet scented breeze was murmuring in the young and tender leaves. The birds were singing and the bees humming gaily above glittering dew and opening flowers. "I can't believe it! It's not possible!" cried Tyltyl. The two children, holding each other by the hand, walked through what had been the graveyard, but where now no graveyard was to be seen. Vainly they searched among the flowers for a trace of the low mounds, stone slabs, and wooden crosses so lately there. In the presence of the truth they saw that all their fears of the dead were foolish. They saw that there are no dead, but life goes on always, only under fresh form. The fading rose sheds its pollen, only to give birth to other roses, and its scattered petals scent the air. The fruits come when the blossoms fall from the trees. When the grub dies, the brilliant butterfly is born. Nothing perishes. There are only changes. Beautiful birds circled about Tyltyl and Middle. There were no blue ones among them, but the two children were so happy over their discovery, they asked for nothing more. Relieved and delighted, they kept repeating, "There are no dead! There are no dead!" Cute. I think it was cute. One last story for today. The last story for today is Why the Ivy is Always Green by Madge Bingham. Madge, that's a name you don't hear that often anymore. There were once two small plants that grew on the edge of a rough red ditch. One of them was an ivy plant, the other a tiny fig tree. It was early in the morning when they first awoke and looked around to see how they liked the world. "I think it's an ugly old world," said the young fig tree. "I see only a rough red ditch with dirty water flowing below." "Oh, it is a beautiful world," replied the ivy vine. "I see clouds floating on high and sunshine and such lovely trees and flowers growing over on the other side of the ditch. Let us try to make this side beautiful too. I will cover the rough red places with pretty green leaves, and you can decorate with your wonderful pink blossoms. Come, let us try." "No," said the small fig tree. "I would not waste my time trying to make this ugly old place beautiful. Now, if, like my mother, I could have grown in the soft, rich earth of the garden, I would have tried to do something. But here there is no use." So from day to day, the little fig grumbled. Nothing pleased her. If the sun shone, she said it was too hot. If the rain fell, she said it was too wet. And if the wind blew, she said it was too cold. But with the little ivy vine, it was very different. And she was happy as a lark from early morning until night. "Whether the sun shines or whether the rains fall, it is God wills," said the little vine, "and I am well pleased. I shall do all I can to make my side of this ditch beautiful, and I shall begin today." And so she did. Though she lived only on the edge of the red ditch, she spread out her leaves day by day, running here and there and yonder, hiding this red spot and that red spot until by and by nothing could be seen but the beautiful green leaves of the ivy, and she did not stop until every ugly spot was hidden by her graceful garlands. "Oh, it is beautiful, beautiful now!" cried the ivy. "Only look!" "Yes," said the fig tree crossly, "but no one sees it. What are you going to do now? Dry up, I suppose, since you can never cross the ditch." "Oh, but I shall cross the ditch," said the ivy vine. "I shall keep on trying until I do. There's so much on the other side I can do to help make the earth world beautiful. Surely there is a way to cross." So she ran out little tendrils, reaching here and there, searching everywhere for a way to cross the ditch. And at last, by climbing down to the edge of the muddy water, she reached a rock halfway across, where she stopped for a moment to rest and wonder what next to do. "You'll never get across," laughed the fig tree. "I told you so. You might as well make up your mind to dry up and stop trying." "I shall never stop trying," called back the ivy vine. "There is a way to cross all ditches. I shall cross this one. Wait and see." "Bravo, my pretty one," said the voice of the old oak tree close by. "Cling to my roots there. I am old and worn, but it is a joy to help one like you. Reach out and I will pull you up." So with one huge stretch, the ivy vine clung tightly to the twisted roots of the old oak, and was soon laughing merrily on the other side. "Dear me, but you are a brave little vine," said the old oak. "I have been watching you across the ditch all these months, and you have changed its ugly red banks into a real thing of beauty." "Now, there was a time once when flowers and grasses grew there, and ferns fringed the edge of the brook, and it was beautiful indeed. Every fall I shook armfuls of crimson and yellow leaves upon the bank, but that was a long time ago, before the great forest fire, which robbed me of my limbs and leaves and left me old and worn. What a joy it would be to me if only I might have my branches decked in leaves one more time. Especially do I long for this in the glad springtime, when trees and flowers are robing themselves for the joyous Easter day. Sad indeed it is to me to know that I shall be clothed no more in a dress of delicate green, like your own pretty leaves, dear ivy." "But you shall," said the ivy vine, clapping her hands. "You have helped me cross the ditch today, and I mean to give you an Easter dress. Watch me." Now, vines had never climbed high before this. They had only run along the ground and down the hill and over walls. But this little ivy vine wrapped her delicate arms around the rough bark of the old oak and began to climb her first tree. She pulled and stretched and stretched and pulled until little by little, up, higher and higher she went, leaving a trail of rich green leaves behind her. It was a lovely sight. "See," she called to the old oak, "I am bringing you a most beautiful Easter dress. How do you like it?" "Beautiful, beautiful," laughed the old oak. "You make me feel young again. But what will you do when you reach my branches?" "Why, I shall keep on climbing," replied the ivy vine. "When I give a dress at all, it must be a whole dress, don't you know? I shall not stop until I have covered every branch, as I did the bare spots on the ditch." And so she did. Every day she climbed a little higher, until by and by every limb on the great old oak was completely hidden by the beautiful leaves of the ivy. The old oak laughed in delight as she looked on her beautiful Easter dress of fresh, rich green. Now, the Queen of the Fairies, who, I tell you, was always on the watch for beautiful deeds, stood under the old oak on Easter Day and wondered at the beautiful. It made her glad to see the joy of the old oak in her new dress, and of course she knew who had given it. So, turning with a smile to the ivy vine, she said, "Because you've tried to make others happy and to make the earth beautiful, your leaves shall never fade. Forever and forever they shall stay beautiful and green. Cold shall not hurt them, nor summer's heat destroy them, and wherever you go, you shall gladden the hearts of men with your freshness and beauty." Very happy indeed did these words make the pretty ivy vine, and ever since she has been climbing over the earth world, hunting bare places to make more beautiful. Stone walls and churches and houses, no place seems too high for her to climb, and never does she weary in making fresh Easter dresses for the trees that are old and worn and cannot make them for themselves. I think that is a good trail of thought. Help who you can when you can. You never know what'll come out of it. And with that, I think that is a good time for us to wish you good night. I know already, but we've had several good stories. We must hurry up and bundle up for bedtime because the sooner we get to sleep, the sooner tomorrow comes. Too soon, I know. But I still have a couple promises I have to fulfill for the Easter Bunny. And see what comes tomorrow. To hang with my family by blood and chosen. So, I want to thank you all for joining me today. And all of our new followers and friends, thank you so much. Oh, and I hope you have a good holiday, whichever one you are celebrating this weekend. And if you're not celebrating any, I hope it is a very good Sunday for you. Maybe you get to sleep in or something. Do something different. You never know. But until then, I want to remind you to be kind to yourself. We are often our own harshest critics, and we are often the worst to ourselves. So spare a little kindness your way. Then once you have that inside yourself, love and kindness is a very renewable commodity, and the world could use it. Or as we heard in the last story, the earth world could use it. Be like the ivy. Try and help where you can. And if you ever doubt it or have some questions, just know that if nobody else, I am looking forward to seeing you here again very soon. So until then, have a good Easter. That's my holiday of choice. Happy Passover. Is that Happy Ramadan? And like I said, and a good Sunday when it comes. Love you.